Hi everyone, welcome back to Babbling Irons. So we got our customary defeat to Man City yesterday. However, much different result, despite the scoreline, than we've seen previously when we played City. I think there were some positives, obviously some negatives in there, some silly mistakes that cost us the game. However, largely positive. So before we get into the lineups, match stats, and all the other things, what was your thoughts on your first thoughts on the game?
Well, first of all, I think you have to mention that Haaland is just an absolute freak, and I think I am. This is how bad I am at fantasy football. That I was sat here the other week going, "Oh, bloody got done by Slow Sports News," and I'm pretty sure I still didn't change it. So I'm pretty sure I didn't put back in the fantasy team. I don't know if that was out of loyalty to West Ham that I wanted him not to do anything, or just probably me being daft as a brush. But yeah, I still didn't change it. He's
in a row as well, Sloth. Oh, your fantasy football there's taken a pasting.
I never do it, and I lose interest after like week one. But, but no, I thought overall, when a striker is that good, and like it's not like we're just talking about someone who's a pace merchant. It's not like you're talking about someone who is on their day, or it's they've got one standout element. You're talking about someone who is complete, like they're a near complete striker, and I think it's almost impossible to defend against when they're on it. Yeah. And yesterday he was clinical.
And clinical is, I think, even an understatement. I don't even know if there is a way that you can define him beyond clinical, because he was.
Well, it was really interesting because there was the clip from last season of Gary O'Neill talking about how you defend against Haaland, or what you do, and I think Haaland this season basically was like, he's obviously watched that clip and gone, this is what I need to do, and people have said, right, your movement needs to improve, and if you peel off the strikers and drop off them, and you'll get yourself so many more chances. And he's just taken it on board, and he is causing chaos in the Premier League.
Absolutely. We'll get into the chaos he gave in the breakdown on at least two of his goals.
Yeah, from a West Ham point of view, I think, as you mentioned, there's a lot there to really be happy about. I think I was talking to the guys who sit near us and saying, like, I think last season, the way we played against these big teams, if we'd lost 3-1, you'd go, like, you'd be frustrated because it felt like we didn't really give it
a go as much.
Yeah. Whereas I think yesterday we had some great chances, but we played like we had a sniff, and that was what was good. Yes, we conceded 3 goals, but when you put things into perspective, we've played Aston Villa, who finished top 4, and we've played the champions, like probably the best team in the world. And I think that when you take that into account, it's not perfect, obviously, but I think there were some really good foundations there for us going.
We was in both games. Let's be honest. We could have drawn in the very last minute against Villa. Yes, we could have also got smashed after some of the display in that first half, but we stayed in it, and we could have drawn that game.
We could have been smashed yesterday. We could have been going into the half time at 3 or 4-0 down. But I don't think it detracts from the fact that it wasn't because we played badly that we could have gone in that way. It was because City was so good. And
I think the Villa one, it was because of how bad we started and how we did. We grew into that game, obviously. But whereas the City game, I think we were always in the game. As long as we could keep the score as to a level where it was for a majority of the game, we were always in it. And, let's kind of get into the game, right? Let's have a look. But this time last year, we actually only had 28% against Man City, when obviously Man City had much more. And we also only had 2 shots on target last year, same as this one. However, we only had 3 shots in total in that entire game. So we clearly showed far more intent. Our touches were more. We had more kind of passes. We actually tackled less in this one than the last one as well. Made about the same kind of clearances. So kind of the statistics are very similar to the last time we played Man City, and we actually lost 3-1. However, positives, like we're actually probably tackling less because we're making more interceptions. We are actually being more positive and have more of the ball, so we have to defend less. And it's a small percentage change, but that is a big change, really, in the grand scheme of things. In fact, we had 10 shots to the only was it 3 that I said last time we played them. It's incredible. And the lineup in itself, how would you think? This is pretty much the lineup me and you discussed actually on the preview. We suggested that Alvarez comes into the middle of that midfield three, and Souček is dropped, and we called Wan-Bissaka coming in at right back as well. Everything else remained the same. The only thing we kind of got wrong was we expected Doku to be on the left for Man City, ended up being on the right-hand side, which was, I think, an interesting change. Obviously, Pep saw what's been happening with Doku against Wan-Bissaka and decided I need to get him on the other side. But that lineup, was you happy with that? Did you kind of glad that we went with that lineup? I know we discussed potentially Fulker coming in as well, but in the grand scheme of things, was you happy with that lineup and kind of understood where it came from?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when we discussed Fulker coming in, I think it was very much with the caveat that it has to be a moment for Antonio. You either say, look, you have to go out there and show us what you can do, or this is what we want from you, and go out and deliver. And I think I think going into the next couple of matches, I would be surprised if he starts. I don't think he was that bad, but I just
wasn't Villa bad. Let's put it that way.
I just think that he showed a real lack of work rate, and he does this thing where you can tell he was a winger for so long, where instead of, like we mentioned with Fulkrug, where he holds in the middle and creates space for the wingers either side of him, he will drop over and he will sort of drift towards the ball. And I think he did that quite a lot yesterday, and it meant that often City were doubling up because they weren't being dragged into the middle, or forced to worry about the striker or multiple players at the back post. But setup wise, I think that's the only one that we could really say, I think that's interchangeable. But I was quite happy with the lineup, and as you mentioned, that's what we kind of want to see going forward.
Yep, no, absolutely. And we to say we started the game like a house on fire is an understatement. For that first, I guess 4 minutes, 5 minutes of that game, it could have been 1-1. Quite frankly,
4 minutes is a very long time. Don't let anyone ever tell you.
Yeah, no. But it's the fact we
say too long.
We clearly caught them on the hop. They wasn't expecting us to come at them as with such ferocity as we did, and we really came out the traps, absolutely hounded them very early, and as a result, had a really good opportunity. We managed to kind of put some pressure on, get the ball, work it out wide to Kudus, who put it across. It took a wicked deflection from Lewis to spin over Ederson, and unbeknownst to, I still can't work this out, because from my view, as the ball's looped over, Antonio is ahead of the centre-back. He's ahead of the defender and favourite to essentially tap the ball into an empty net. But somehow, and I'm going to leave this to you to lay in the criticism because I know it's coming, the defender gets in ahead of him. And I was kind of sitting there bewildered at the time as to how has that opportunity not been finished? It just seemed ripe and ready for Antonio to throw himself at it, get a head on it, anything, and just to stop the defender from getting there. We're going to have to commend the defender. Good defending, got himself there. However, I don't feel I should be commending the defending in that situation. And I should be actually saying, what an amazing start to the game. West Ham 1-0 up after 2 minutes.
Well, so I sit in 2-3-5, and so we're pretty much on the halfway line. And
I'm 230, so I'm a little bit further down. I'm literally right on that side, so I look right at that goal, which is.
So it's interesting that when like we talk about the perspectives from the position, it's
You've got an allergic reaction to the opportunity.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's interesting when we talk about the perspective from the positions, where I think I was looking at it and thinking, what the heck's happened? Like, how has he not won that? The defender must have done something. And people around me were going, no, I think he's misjudged it. And that's the only thing that I can really think of to excuse it, that he misjudges the flight of the ball, because if he throws himself at that or challenges for it in any way, I think he wins it.
Yeah, ball probably going to hit him and just bounce in because he's so close to goal. Any kind of deflection is arguably going to put it into the back of the net.
But this is where we've talked about a poacher or a striker's instinct in the past, and this is where I kind of feel like Antonio does really lack. It's what takes a striker from 10 goals a season to 15 or 16, and I think if you have a natural striker, they throw themselves at that. And look, I'm not going to be too hard on Antonio, because there was a lot of very positive stuff that he did, but I just think in that situation, because the place was rocking to start with, I think that
and it really elevated because everyone was because we came at City, it was like, wow, what's happening? So it was just a wave of positivity which kind of kept pushing us forward in that first early exchange.
And I think that was why I was surprised he didn't challenge for it, because it was like, you've got the chance to really get the place going and prove a few people wrong, change the narrative. And I was really disappointed. I think it's an easy tap in if you throw yourself at it. And I watched it back, and I was kind of hoping, or maybe there's a really good bit of defending in there, and I'm not going to have to be mean, but I just thought it was really poor.
No, I agree. I'm still slightly bemused by the fact that we weren't 1-0 up at that point. I just can't work out as to how, to the point of starting to then think, well, maybe if Walker was on the pitch, I believe he's going to throw himself at that, because if he will want to make more of an impression, that if he's given that type of opportunity, he's going to, if he has to run through a defender in that close, I can imagine he's going to do that, and he's going to want to do that. But just, as you say, we're going to be kind, would say maybe he's misjudged it. He hasn't necessarily been aware of the pressure that's going to come in from behind, and just kind of assume it's just going to drop and he can just tap it in. But again, you can't wait. You have an opportunity against Man City, you have to take it, and we didn't. And it seemed to, I know it was only 4 minutes, kind of where we really bambled, but then City was like, right, we need to get on the ball. And then they slowed the pace down and then started to really dictate. And they had an opportunity with Haaland. There was a good cross into the area. There was a header over the bar. And then, the patterns, particular pattern of play just seemed to develop, where City really kind of held onto the ball a lot, kind of moved us around. And annoyingly, we didn't make them work for their goal. It was a mistake. It was a really poor pass from Emerson. Me and you were talking about this last night, and you thought it was first Paqueta, and I said, "Oh, actually, from where I looked, like it was Emerson." Watching it back today, is an awful pass from Emerson.
Yeah,
it's just absolute terrible. And I understand the point that you raised yesterday about thought it's Paqueta taking too much time on the ball, and he did initially when he receives the ball. So if we watch this, he receives the ball from Antonio. He gets pressure from Bernardo Silva, who's the important player in this whole situation, really, bar obviously Haaland. And the ball kind of gets slightly behind him because his touch isn't great, so he's not able to release it to Kudus, who's on the far left, who can then, in turn, may have been able to then release Antonio. Instead, he has to play it back to Emerson. Now, when Emerson gets the ball, he inexplicably, it's fair enough, you're going to play it to Paqueta, you need to get it into his feet so he can potentially lay it back into you, or he can try around the corner, pass up to Kudus again on the left wing. But instead, he plays it behind. And at this point, he's off balance. He can't really control the ball. And you've got the forward momentum from Silva. He's just able to come in and take the ball off him. Haaland is already anticipating that this ball is going to be won. And he's already started to make that move in behind We've got Alvarez there, and you can see the closest defender to him is actually Mavropanos. Mavropanos, again, what we saw in the Villa game hasn't anticipated that there might be something that happens. And when the ball is played, you can see there's a gap between our two centre backs. Mavropanos is now only on the move, where Haaland has already been, started that movement into the space. He knows where the ball's going to be played. Silva is able to release it quickly. Paqueta's not able to kind of grab him and pull him down, which arguably he would have done. And by the time the ball's released, Haaland takes one touch with the outside of his boot, I think it is, maybe his instep, which just puts it into the path. And then he just does what Haaland does, just runs around it and then slides it in past the goalkeeper. And yeah, it was 1-0. Really silly, stupid goal to give away. And you give a chance to Man City, they will punish you. And they punished us so harshly with that one incident. And it's a silly mistake. It was an easy pass to make. And just to be playing it as you do against a team like City, like that, just absolute and utter undue care from Emerson. And then I'm not blaming Mavropanos, but I would say that Mavropanos needs to be far more alert in these types of games against these types of teams. And when he is the closest essentially to Haaland, he needs to be switched on as to when that guy moves, you need to be ready and already moving. But he's basically caught flat as well.
I think that's kind of one of the benefits of maybe when we saw Alvarez dropping deeper. I think that you have someone who you can basically just dedicate to Haaland and stick to him. And unfortunately, I don't really know how you give Haaland too much space, because surely as a defender you just think, actually, I'm just going to stick to him. But
as you said, though,
his movement has improved.
He very rarely stood on the centre back yesterday.
Yeah,
but the entire game stood off the centre back, and well, how do you mark him? Unless you're going to commit a fielder,
you have to either double up on him, or you have to basically say, we're going to try and stick within touching distance.
You would need so much communication for that, though, don't you? Because you either got to have your midfielder constantly tracking him, and then when he goes, passes him over to the centre back, and vice versa. There has to be so much communication and concentration in that, and you have to concentrate so hard against City anyway because of the way they move the ball. And
he probably will find a way to score, but the thing is that I think it was disappointing, that first goal, because, as you said, we started so well, and that was just felt like such basic defending. And to give of all people Haaland that much space and time, it was a disappointment. But again, as you said, it's a great finish. He does really well to open up his body, and I think he just gives Areola enough doubt over where he's going to put the ball.
Yeah, Areola goes to the left because the way he's thinking he's going to put it in, smash it hard and low to that side, and it's just calmly slotted to the other. So basically, he does it it's like a penalty, essentially. The way he took it is how you would essentially deceive a goalkeeper at a penalty. Just uses his body to make him go one way and then slots it the other.
He made it look like the easiest finish in the world, and that is not what it is. I think
that's Haaland, isn't it? He pretty much makes any opportunity, in most cases, look simple, when in actual fact, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see other players possibly put that wide, maybe hit the goalkeeper's legs, but he's just so clinical. It's annoying how good and clinical he is. But
I think it's easy to look at the performance, and obviously Areola went off at half time, but I think he made one world-class save, which I think is well worth a shout out.
One from De Bruyne as well. Took a short corner, wasn't it? It was a phenomenal save.
De Bruyne hits it with such venom. The hand that Areola gets to it is incredibly strong.
I think it's unexpected as well, that shot, isn't it? Because of the angle, you don't expect him to shoot from there, so it adds to the importance and the brilliance of that save.
But I think that both keepers, that there's nothing they could have really done about the goals. I think it's that kind of game.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what was frustrating is when that goal went in, we seemed to revert back to the type of last season. Was way too defensive. Showed probably far too much respect. There was instances where players weren't being tracked and allowed to just run through. Essentially putting a burden on teammates. I think Alvarez, Paqueta, and Guido worked so hard in that middle to try and limit space. And the thing that we mentioned, the reason we're probably going to want to try to play that free there is to try and control that middle space, force Man City wide, and see if they can find the answers. And we'll find absolutely they found answers for their second goal, and we'll go through that. But we also mentioned as well, if we're able to beat Man City's press, beat that first line of press, we can cause problems. And yes, it was an own goal. And when you see the screenshot, we didn't really have anyone to threaten, but this was the kind of precise point we were making. If we were able to break that press and get players forward, you can cause Man City problems. And we kind of have the ball. We actually invited a bit of pressure. Ball's laid out to Wan-Bissaka, who had a brilliant game. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. But Wan-Bissaka receives the ball, and Grealish has to then come out to press. But what we did well was something that we didn't necessarily do enough of, especially in that first kind of, I guess, 30 minutes or so of the game. We didn't kind of play the ball quick enough at times. And this is just kind of, I think it's two touch actually from Wan-Bissaka. He brings it into his stride, passes it in the Kudus. Obviously, Grealish is coming out to press, which opens this space, and Paqueta smartly moves into it. Kudus plays it first time, and then Paqueta's able to get the ball turn, and he then just lays it into Bowen. Antonio was because obviously Kudus is kind of gone into that centre forward position at this point, has gone into the far left. Important thing I want everyone to note: look how many touches we've had at this stage in their area. Obviously, we'd have had a touch. If we'd have had a touch earlier, it would have been a goal. But funny enough, we have one touch. Well, this is the first time we get into their area and have a touch. It results in a goal. Funnily enough, and oddly enough, but the ball's delivered to Bowen. He's able to take it into his stride, and again, defender backs off. Kudus is kind of arriving in the middle. Antonio is again, bearing in mind how quick Bowen's got up, where Kudus is. Antonio not to be in the picture is quite frustrating, because I would like to have seen your centre forward who's sat on that left wing to be busting a gut to get in there, sniffing that this could be a chance for a goal. But fortunately, it worked out well for us, because Bowen gets the ball, drives at the defender, and then he just smashes it across. Now, fair play to Antonio. He does then get into the area, but again, he's not necessarily going to be in a place where he's going to be able to impact. Same with Kudus as well. Both of them should be, I guess, pushing much harder to get into a position where they can actually score, or getting into that near that 6-yard area. And you could say it takes a lucky deflection, but this is the point of why you look to drill the ball sometimes across the face of goal, because any kind of touch, any kind of knock from the centre back can lead into either a difficult save for the goalkeeper or a goal. And in this instance, it led to a fantastic goal for us, put us back to 1-1, and it gave us the opportunity to get back into the game.
This video is sponsored by Emotive. Emotive provide cutting-edge digital services, solutions, and training to companies and businesses of all sizes. Emotive have worked with some fantastic brands in the past, as you can see behind me, the likes of Apple, Google, Tesco, and of course, Babbling Irons. Emotive offer 4 key services, the first being digital solutions, the second being professional training and coaching, the third being fractional experts, and the fourth being AI readiness. We're going to be working with Emotive on our channel to improve how we showcase the data to you guys in our breakdown videos and data analysis videos. If you want to find out more information about how Emotive can work with you, make sure to scan the QR code now, which will take you to emotivetouch.com, where you can find out more details about the company, and the link will be in the description. A massive thank you to Emotive once again for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it.
So Sloth, we got ourselves back to 1-1. We were probably an undeserved goal considering what we'd done during that period, and we were back in the game. But at that stage, did you think that was going to kind of, re-inject some, I guess, some impetus into our play, or was you kind of expecting us to kind of remain as we were for that period and kind of be really kind of trying to be defensively resolute and restrict space?
I expected it to kick us on. I have just got to mention I've just been attacked by a wasp. It flew straight in the room, and while you were talking, like pretty much for the whole of the goal, it was chasing me around the room. So, like, I left the chair.
It's seen the flower from the mole man, and it's like, I'm after that.
It's obviously seen the flower, and it was like, oh. Yeah, I was chased around the room, but it's sorted now. No, I was really like, I thought the movement was good, as you mentioned. I think the fact that the runners are where they are and Antonio and Kudus aren't quite up with play was a bit concerning, because you have to take your chances against Manchester City, and I think we got very lucky that this was an own goal, because had it just been a ball across, I don't think anyone is there to follow it up.
There's another instance in the second half where there was a ball put across that was a fantastic ball across, but no one's there. But actually, I don't think that was less on the fact that people didn't take the chance. It's just the opportunity come about. But yeah, I agree. It was concerning that no one was there at that point.
But I was hoping that would be the thing that kind of kicked us on. But as we've said, we've got to praise Manchester City, because their overall play was fantastic. And when they scored 3 goals, as we mentioned, it's not the fact that they're mistakes as opposed that gift the goals. The first one, maybe you can say it's very poor from Emerson, but Haaland still has a lot to do. And
there's a fantastic press from Silva as well to be in a position in which to press to win the ball back. So again, like you say, there are mistakes, things to be negative about from our perspective. However, we've got to praise the opposition for then how they managed to create that opportunity essentially out of nothing as well.
Yeah, and I think that it was definitely what the place needed, because the atmosphere after that goal was again, it started really well, and then as soon as they scored, it was a bit like, oh God, are we going to be in for another 5-0 thrashing or an Arsenal result? And I think that helped settle the nerves, but it was definitely matched by much better play from us. I think, particularly in the second half, the start of the second half, we started so brightly, and it was a frustration that I felt we didn't really capitalize on the momentum that we had.
No, I agree. And this is the second goal from City, but this is what they did brilliantly throughout that first half. They consistently kept Doku and Grealish wide. And this is the thing we've talked about so many times across over the last couple of years, of how the best teams are able to compact and stretch the pitch at exactly the same time. And Grealish and Doku just consistently cause us problems, because we was trying to be compact defensively. They were able then to stretch the pitch because they pushed their 2 wingers essentially right out to the byline. They moved up. Guardiola moved into midfield, sitting next to Kovacic, and Lewis did the same. So then they essentially kept Akanji and Ruben Diaz as the kind of the back 2, and whereas the rest joined the front line. So you had obviously Haaland kind of moving over more to the right side. Then you had Bernardo Silva would go into the centre forward position, and then you'd also have Kevin De Bruyne go into that kind of inside left kind of channel. And what frustrates me about this goal, whilst it is brilliant play from City, I can't take that away from it. It's a fantastically worked goal. They move us around like chess pieces. Was the fact that we do still give too much space. And when we look at this instant here, we have, I would say, arguably a good setup. We're in good positions. We're probably maybe a little bit far too over on our right hand side, and this will become clear as to why I say that when we actually get to what ends up being the goal. But for me, Bowen allows Grealish to go far too easy. He comes over, he gets a bit flat-footed, and Grealish spots him flat-footed and goes. And it has to be commented on Kevin De Bruyne's movement, because he goes in behind Wan-Bissaka. He puts doubt in Wan-Bissaka's mind, because ideally he wants to go in and challenge on Grealish and be able to double up. However, because of that run has gone in behind him, he's then pulling him slightly in that direction. Mavropanos also has to be mindful, because if Wan-Bissaka goes to Grealish and is then played down that side, he needs to be out to go and go out as well. And this is maybe where you could say Alvarez should have been a lot closer, because you can see he's the closest player to Bernardo Silva in this situation. So maybe if he was closer, he might have been able to have nicked in and prevented this goal. But again, this has actually been really quite nitpicky, really, as to not finding fault, but saying where we could have maybe improved this situation. I think that's the important thing. It's not about finding fault. It's about stating where those small moments, or those little kind of, centimeters and meters essentially come into play as to how we then, don't end up stopping this goal.
Well, I think it's also important to say that, like, this is exactly the kind of thing that they will be looking at, and I don't mean that with a sort of big-headed, we're doing the same thing. But if this is how you have to defend against the top teams, this is exactly what they'll be looking at and thinking, right, next time we need to be tighter to them, or we need to make sure that in these passages of play, we don't give them the same distance. And, that shape, as you mentioned, that is a strong shape. And ideally, if we were to look at playing a back three in the future, you'd be looking at that and going, okay, well, we know we can do that. We know Alvarez can drop deeper, or if in the future, maybe we could put Todibo there, it might free up someone like Alvarez to be closer to someone. Yeah. But the key point is that, we can overanalyze, or, you don't want to be too critical on the individuals in this stage of play, because let's face it, it's a very good goal, and the City movement makes it such that it's very hard to defend against. But when you're playing against the best teams, this sort of analysis in terms of how you can improve and maybe get closer to the man, that's what everyone will be looking at. And
great. And it is millimeters, inches, centimeters, the difference. That kind of over prevents this game of goal, or causes trouble for City in terms of having to defend it. And we're also in good positions in terms of we need to counter. Look where Paqueta is. We haven't got Kudus isn't in this picture. Antonio is actually heading. You see where the Man City team is. If we was able to say to nick that into and put it into Paqueta, if he can beat that press, which is going to be Guardiola, Kovacic and Lewis, all of a sudden we've potentially got Bowen and Antonio in a 2v2 against Man City. So,
and I think as well, like one of the big things that City have done so well in recent seasons is from this sort of play. If Alvarez were to get a nick on it, then it falls out to someone like
you've got Kovacic in the middle there, just kind of burst onto it.
And we know exactly what they can do from that sort of distance, strike wise. Rodri has done it time and time again, and that's how good City are. And those are the sort of fine lines that you have to pick out and say, look. Like Alvarez may well have been able to cut out the pass, but it could well fall to Kovacic and he could strike it. And in that situation, it's like, well, you can do everything perfectly, but when you're playing against the best side, it doesn't really matter in terms of if they get one sniff, generally they'll take it.
Yeah, and as we roll this on, the ball is actually then gets into Bernardo Silva. The player who then becomes closest to Bernardo Silva is actually Guido. He is aware of the pressure, lays it into Kovacic, who again is aware of what's coming to him. He then lays it into Lewis, and is Haaland here is where, again, it just shows how good he is. He gets on the back of Kilman. Emerson at this point, arguably, is actually in a really good position. However, because he's not aware of where Haaland is, arguably you could probably say actually, if we wanted to be pedantic, he should arguably be right behind Haaland rather than in front as he is. And because Lewis gets the ball, again, the space that we have, it is too much. So you can see what we have is we have Alvarez is trying to burst in. We've got Kilman trying to close down the space. Emerson, who was quite frankly in front of Kilman, ends up being right behind him again. Doesn't put any pressure or enough pressure on. We kind of stand off too much, and you can't. As we said, you just can't give Haaland the sniff, and he absolutely smashes it. It's not a delicate, well kind of disguised shot. It is pure thunder in that boot, and just absolutely lashes it past the keeper, and you're just like, you sit there and go, it was just that moment of, oh, here we go. I felt at that point, they might pick up another couple of goals now before the end of the half. It just kind of, I felt the air was sucked out a little bit at that point, because it was so well worked. It felt like we were dealing with them, whilst maybe giving half chances and so on. Felt like we were dealing with the pressure, and then it told in that instant, and it was a fantastic finish.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to give City the credit, and it's going to sound a bit like we're just praising them, but I think when you are comprehensively beaten and when you play well, on top of that, we didn't play badly. I think you have to give them the credit they deserve, and we'll get on to sort of some of the more positive bits of how we.
We're going to be positive after this, don't worry.
But I think, as we said time and time again, you give these top teams chances and they take them, and it's you might be lucky to get away with 2 or 3 chances and ride your luck, and maybe you nick a winner. But I think it was very comprehensive in terms of their finishing yesterday, and when a top team is playing like that, it's not a good thing for the opposition.
No, and I think in both cases, when we look at the Villa game and the Man City game, we've lost both of our home games, this season. However, I do think in both those games we've actually been beaten by exceptional centre forward play. Duran, the way he started and took his goal in terms of the movement, etc., and then the finish, and Haaland in this game, 2 exceptional pieces of centre forward play. Obviously, Haaland had far more plays, but again, we've been done by exceptional centre forwards, and I don't think there's any shame in that. Sometimes you kind of take your lumps on that and go, right, well, how can we improve? And I think Lopetegui made that point of, there are things we need to improve. Now we will look to improve, but there are also other things we'll take away as the positives. And, we're going to start talking about some of those positives. I thought Alvarez had a really good game, considering first game back properly as starting, and to play as he did against City for, I think, about the 60, 70 minutes that he did was really impressive. And one of those impressive moments was him Cruyff turning, Kevin De Bruyne. Funny enough, 2 of our attacks actually come from Kevin De Bruyne again, absolutely done on the press. Kevin De Bruyne kind of comes in, gets done with a Cruyff turn by Alvarez, and he just pops his head up and then pings a beautiful diagonal. And this is like the 45th minute, right out to Kudus, who's got Lewis for probably one of the only real times in that half, 1v1. Takes on Lewis, hits a good shot low and hard across goal. Fortunately, it's slightly off target. It comes a bit more of a cross shot, arguably, and Antonio is coming in at the back post, but is not maybe coming in with enough pace. But in fairness to Antonio, it was hit hard. I think some people probably like, oh no, you should have done better to get there. But in all fairness, he was in the right position. This is the point that I'm actually happy where Antonio was, because if that ball has less pace on it, he's arguably in the right position to then just put his toe out and then poke that in.
It's the opposite of that chance he had in Absolutely. The very first few moments.
Yeah, completely agree. It was a positive way to end that half, because it was just that reminder of, well, we're still in the game. We still have, whilst it's a 2-1, well, we still have that opportunity to get in. And then, we came out in the second half. Alvarez seemed to drop into the back 3, particularly when, I nearly said Aston Villa, when Man City had the ball. And he seemed to really actually just his focus was, you stand on Haaland. That seemed to be the change in the second half. And we really, again, we started to play a lot better. Even Lopetegui said the second half we were a far better team. We could have drawn that second half, which I agreed to. I think we could have. We had some really big opportunities in that half. We'll talk them through in a bit, but there was one effort where Bowen's put in a more of a half chance, but he puts in a good shot after a good cross after some sustained pressure. But Kudus, when he gets away at the back post, isn't able to kind of get his body in the right position to get any contact to kind of head it back across goal, and then it goes out for a goal kick. But then we also had in that 70th minute, Bowen put in a brilliant cross from a corner. Kilman manages to kind of get himself a free header by using his strength to kind of push away a defender, and heads it over the bar. Arguably should be getting it on target. I think if he does get it on target, probably is then going to be an equaliser. We then just Souček, bless his heart. I love him, but dear God, the man can frustrate.
He tests you.
Yeah, exactly. He tests you. Like Kudus does some absolutely brilliant work to win the ball against Bernardo Silva on the left-hand side. He plays it into Fulkrug, who he knows he's not going to be able to get the control and then to hit, and it's slightly behind. So he kind of pivots himself and controls and lays it back to Souček, who, rather than hits it first time, just takes a touch and then tries to this really bad touch of his left foot to try and put it back into Fulkrug, which, fortunately for him, bounces off Kovacic and falls back to him. But then there is just the worst shot with his left foot possible. And what was even more frustrating is in that moment when Fulkrug lays it back, if he's more aware, he has an opportunity to actually just to run over that ball, because Paqueta is right behind him on the edge of the area. He could run onto it and hit it. When the ball comes to Souček, he's screaming for the ball to be played into his feet. He has Bowen to the right of him as well. Again, if he leaves the ball, Bowen could come in onto his left foot and then get and whip around it. And when he misses, you just have to watch their reaction. Bowen just turns his back and lifts his head up in frustration because he's not even on target. And it doesn't even take a nick off of a Man City player. That's how bad a shot it was. And Paqueta just grabs his shorts, pulls them as hard as he can, and then just kind of leans down to kind of do his laces. But both of those players were so frustrated in that point. But I do, and then right at the very end, Crescencio Somerville has a really good shot that Edison gets a hand to and then forces it onto the post. But the big opportunity, again, fell to Mo Kudus. And this is where, I know Paqueta can frustrate, and he did at times. I'm a little bit more forgiving because I at least feel that much of the time when he's trying to push play. One of the ones that really frustrated me when he puts the ball down for a free kick, plays it, and it goes to no one. But the thing that frustrated me more was not the fact that he passed that free kick into nowhere. It's the fact that he saw there was a gap in the Man City defence, and he sees Souček and he plays it to him. Souček is just completely oblivious, and then they pick the ball up. And it is just at that point, I actually shared with his frustration. So I think
unfortunately you can't make any assumptions with Souček. You just can't.
No. You
can't assume he's on the same wavelength as Paqueta. To be honest, I don't really know how Paqueta thinks that he's on the same wavelength as him.
I know. Because it was one of those things. It's like it would have been, in hindsight now, more sensible to have just gone, no. Let's reset, try a free kick, and see what we can do. I praise the idea. How unfortunately the execution wasn't there because both players was just wavelengths were like that. But the one, again, he set off Bowen for the first goal as well for good movement and a simple but a good pass into his path that allowed him to kind of continue within his stride. The other one, now, this one is not only is it stupid, is it foolhardy, is it insanely nerve-wracking, it is pure genius, and it is just absolute audacity for him to do this in his 6-yard area with Haaland bearing down on him. And it all came about from City putting a cross It misses the City players, and he looks like he's about to clear it with the outside of his boot. And Haaland is coming at him, full pelt, jumps up, and he dummies it. He absolutely dummies the ball and takes it, moves just to kind of the edge of the 6-yard box, and then he just plays it into Mo Kudus. Once again, Kevin De Bruyne comes in far too quickly, and Kudus is far too quick with his feet, very quick, kind of minded as well. Look where Bowen is as well. This is to the points we raised another instance where players weren't getting up in support quick enough. Antonio as well is literally just past the edge of the D. This is what frustrated me in the first half, that we didn't necessarily commit. Those players didn't commit enough. And in this instance, they did. They absolutely full-heartedly committed. And that is what I think we saw in the second half a lot more. And obviously what Lopetegui got into the players, you have to commit on attacks. You can't be half-hearted. You have to go for it. And Mo gets past De Bruyne. He then makes Jeremy Doku look like a child who tries to challenge him, but he just shrugs him off. Doku's been one of the strongest dribblers we've seen in the Premier League, obviously bar Mo Kudus, and Mo Kudus just showed why he is quite frankly, in Europe at this point in time, the most successful and strongest dribbler in Europe. It's not even up for debate. It's statistically true. He's one of the best, if not the best, ball carrier at this point in time in Europe. He's just so good, and he shrugs him off. And then also we've got a 3-on-2. And this is almost unheard of for West Ham to have this kind of situation. And it was almost perfect. This is the point you raised. When you play City, you have to be perfect. And this was that attack that was almost everything we wanted it to be. Me and you talked about it in the preview. If you can beat that City press and get it into that front three, we was assuming Antonio's playing, the pace we have is going to cause City problems. Regardless of who they have, it's going to cause problems. And this was an instance where it very nearly did. So, he's done Kevin De Bruyne, sent him for a hot dog. He then sits Doku down to have a little rest. And then, again, we've commented how many times he needs to release it quicker. He needs to release it. And he releases it at the perfect time, lays it into Bowen, again, perfect in his stride. Antonio is committing to the attack and bursting forward as well. And then we get into this situation. They manage to get players back. But again, they're still massively behind. Mo Kudus is in a superb position. So is Antonio at this point as well. Rico Lewis does really well in this situation because he doesn't really commit, but he puts himself in a position where he's an obstacle for the pass. And Bowen overcooks it slightly. It's on his weaker foot, so I'll give him that. But he does overcook it. And it means that Mo has to change his stride and the ball goes a little bit wider. And again, Antonio, fair play to him, busted it up, got in there. He actually got ahead of the ball and ahead of the play, which was unfortunate because had he not, he would have been in a place where Mo actually could have just tapped it across and he's arguably got a tap in. He may get challenged by Lewis, but Lewis probably not going to win the ball. He's either going to challenge him and give away a penalty, or he's going to put some pressure on. But Antonio, and as much as we say Antonio can be a bit rash, I do not see him missing. If he was in an onside position and Mo puts it across, he's not going to miss that. And it would have been 2-2. But because of that, Mo takes responsibility, not having to go at Antonio for being in potentially offside position. If on target, it's a goal. There's no way Ederson is saving that on target because he hits it with such ferocity at that near post. And it's just, I think Kudus at the moment is just not having that little bit of luck he needs. He came very close against Palace last week, had 2 great opportunities in this game as well. His goal is coming, but it's things like that. And as I say, the other opportunities that we had that lead me to be really positive about the game. And that I feel that if we do that in other games, we're playing that way and create those types of chances against other teams, we're going to win far more than we lose. And also we're going to be entertained by really good counter-attacking play. We're going to be entertained by the fact that we have good play in possession as well. And it's kind of things like that I'm just like, well, actually, these are positives. We'll talk about the City's goal in a minute. But again, that to me came about for us pushing for an equaliser. And I agree with what Alex Ferguson's always said in the past, in that he would rather lose a game 3-1 and push for an equaliser or a winner than to sit back and lose 2-1. And yeah, I got to give it to Lopetegui, got to give it to the players. That second half, we tried. We was under a lot of pressure, and City did have chances. I'm not disguising that or hiding away from that. City could have probably had another one, besides the one that they scored with Haaland, to make it 3-1. But we gave them some scares in that second half, and we reminded them that they were in a game. And at any point, had we just had that little bit of luck on our side, we may have actually got in another goal, and would have been then interesting to see how that game played out had we got converted one of those chances that we had. And they were still at the points where it was 2-1 as well. All of them, bar the Crescendo one, were all at 2-1. And to have that many chances against City, and good chances, is testament to how Lopetegui set up in that second half and how the players came out and played in that second half for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we looked far sharper in that second half, and I think if we go into games playing that way, we'll come away with at least a point from a lot of them. And even when you look at, say, potentially bringing Todibo in, I am frustrated by, yet again, it feels like we haven't got a striker that really suits this style of play, which is incredibly frustrating. But I do think that when you look at the players we have, we can make up for that. And, if that means putting Bowen in that centre forward position or Kudus in that central position, and either of them on the right hand side, and having quite a interchangeable attack, which is kind of what City have been doing, and what we've been praising a lot of this video, I think we can really reap the rewards from that, because, as you mentioned, we offered so much for portions of the game. But when you're talking about, with no disrespect, lower half teams, you might have those chances and you're 2-0 up. But against City, unless you really take those chances and you're ruthless, you're going to go in maybe with a 1-goal cushion, and they'll feel confident with that. So I think if we see more of the same, particularly in the attack, it's going to reap rewards. But the way we transitioned, and I think we looked a bit more solid.
Oh, sorry, mate. You actually froze when you talked about the way we transitioned.
Oh, I think when you look at the way that we transitioned and carried the ball forward, whether it was from, countering that City press, or with a moment like those Cruyff turns that you mentioned, I think it's going to reap rewards against any side. You're more likely to get points against the lower half, but I think when you play like that, we've got the defensive mindset now. I know we're apparently still looking at a potential free agent to come in and add a bit more depth, but I think we've got a very strong foundation in it. And when Todibo comes in, the idea that you bring Mavropanos on as a 3 and kind of just say to him, you're going to be my athletic unit. You can push and you can press and go in, and maybe like we mentioned that chance in the first half where he doesn't quite no, it's the second half, where he doesn't commit to a challenge. Oh, it's for the third goal, isn't it? He doesn't commit to a challenge, and then City play through us. I think if he has cover, he's far more likely to make that challenge and hopefully counter their counter attack. But I think there was enough there to really be positive about, and it's something that I think in the coming weeks we'll see more of.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, look, I want to end more on a positive note. I don't really want to talk about the City's third goal. I know it's a bit weird, but you know what? No. They scored it. It was a brilliant finish. So, yeah, we're going to leave it there. Look, we could talk about the Haaland goal, but we know what happened in there. It was a great finish, but there are a lot of positives. Yes, we did end up on the end of a 3-1 defeat. However, we can't say it was a result where we, like you said earlier, you walk away frustrated as to we didn't even give it a go. We didn't even give it a chance. But if you're going to pick out a man of the match, who would you pick? I think I'll probably go with Wan-Bissaka. I think he had a brilliant game. He was far better getting forward and putting a fantastic cross. One of the only opportunities he did put in a cross. Unfortunately, we didn't have anyone at the back post to kind of tap it in. Probably about the one time Mo wasn't there. It's the time the ball goes into a position where he would be. But I'd probably say he was probably one of our best players on the day. Special mention of Alvarez as well. But for me, there's a lot of positives despite the result, and we move on to the next one. But final thoughts, Lough?
No, I thought, as you mentioned, there's a lot there to be positive about. I think Wan-Bissaka can potentially make himself the buy of the window. I think he's been fantastic so far, and there's a lot to build upon. If we can add, say, a couple in January, I think we'll be in a really strong place for the end of the season if we can keep playing against teams like City this way. And yeah, I think very positive signs there. Let's just hope we carry him forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to end there. Thanks everyone for watching. If you do like, please do, hit the like button. Please do subscribe. All those things help out the channel. But yeah, until next time, one last thing to say, and that is,
come on, you irons.